You are listening to the Second to None podcast with DJB.
Eventually, maybe you'll actually say when the teacher says Christopher Columbus discovered America and he met those Indians here. There were no Indians here when Christopher Columbus got here. There were people from Africa who had been here for over 10,000 years before Christopher Columbus was born. It's time for us to teach our children the truth.
Talking to foundational Black American Negroes. Happy New Year's 2026. Welcome back to the Second to None podcast, and I'm your host, DJB. And today we talking culture, history, and kingship. Sons and Daughters of Abu Bakr, a preservation of American Negro oral history. Before the ships, before the chains. Yes, before the slave ships, there was the African ships. Before captivity, there was command. Before silence, there was memory. This episode exists because the official story of the American Negro history is incomplete. It tells us where we were delivered, but not where we came from. It begins with chains, but it does not explain the people who were chained. Should Africa now bow to its king, their offspring, the American Negro? Some say Killmonger's story in Marvel's Black Panther comes from real-world struggles of the American Negro and the African diaspora, and inspirations from figures like Tupac Shakur, blending themes of colonialism, racial injustice, and vengeance for lost heritage to create a complex antagonist driven by the trauma of his father's abandonment and his own harsh life in America. His character explores the anger and pain felt by Negro people experiencing oppression, channeling it into a violent, world-altering revolution against perceived oppressors. Our elders always knew this. They did not always have documents, but they had memory. They told us quietly, sometimes cautiously, sometimes proudly, that our story did not begin in slavery. Africa was not an isolated continent waiting to be discovered. Long before European expansion, Africa was already connected to the world through trade, scholarship, navigation, and empire. African civilizations mapped the stars, managed economies, and ruled territories that stretched across deserts and seas. The Malian Empire stood at the center of this reality. It controlled gold that powered global economies. It managed trade routes that connected continents. It produced leaders who were not provincial, but global in reach and understanding. Most Negroes have heard of Timbuktu and their oral family traditions. It was a major African center for learning and culture, renowned from the 14th to 16th centuries for its vast libraries, universities like Sankore, and scholars studying science, law, medicine, and spirituality, preserving knowledge in countless manuscripts that revealed Africa's rich written history. Though extremist attacks in 2012 threatened this heritage, prompting global efforts to digitize and protect it. The Golden Age, its peak of affluence and learning, occurred during the Mali Empire, particularly in the 15th and 16th centuries. Commercial and cultural crossroads, Timbuktu's wealth from trans-Saharan trade, gold, salt, funded its intellectual growth. Tangible heritage. The manuscripts provide concrete evidence of the Mali Empire's sophisticated culture and intellectual contributions, far beyond oral traditions. Yet when the story of the Negro in America is taught, Black presence appears suddenly and without history. The implication is that we arrived without memory, without knowledge, without agency. That framing was intentional. This podcast exists because what was erased from books survived in families. This oral tradition should be respected just like any other oral tradition we respect here in America. Like the American Indian, the American Negro has an American-told history and a kingship to Africa that should not be forgotten. Oral tradition is not myth. It is what remains when written records are denied, destroyed, or ignored. It is how people protect truth when power controls paper. We are not here to argue with institutions. We are here to preserve what our elders told, taught, and trusted us with. Who is Master Abu Bakr in the Western Sea? In the early 13th century, the Mali Empire stood as one of the most powerful empires on earth. Its wealth was not symbolic, it was measurable. It influenced trade, currency, and political relationships across regions far beyond West Africa. At the center of this empire stood a ruler remembered as Abu Bakr. He inherited power, stability, and wealth beyond imagination. Nothing forced him to give it up. And yet he did. According to preserved historical accounts, Abu Bakr abdicated his throne voluntarily. He did not do so because of revolt or failure. He did so because of belief. He believed there was land beyond the Western Ocean. This belief was not treated as fantasy. It was taken serious enough to justify the largest known maritime expedition organized by an African empire. Ships were built, crews were assembled, supplies were gathered. This was not a symbolic journey. It was a planned voyage backed by imperial resources. The expedition sailed westward across the Atlantic. It never returned. Abu Bakr himself joined a later expedition. He did not send others while staying behind. He went with them. He did not come back. This matters. You do not abandon an empire to chase a rumor. You do not invest fleets and lives into myth. You do it because you possess knowledge that does not appear in surviving records. This is where written history pauses, but this is also where oral history begins. Among American Negro communities, stories survived of Africans crossing oceans before captivity, stories of people already here, stories of arrival without chains. Abu Bakr's disappearance did not end his legacy, it transformed it into memory. His brother shook the world economy. After Abu Bakr's departure, leadership passed to his successor, Musa. What followed would become one of the most documented demonstrations of African global power in recorded history. Musa did not inherit a weak empire. He inherited a system already commanding wealth, trade, and influence. What made his reign unforgettable was not conquest, but exposure. During his pilgrimage eastward, Musa traveled with unprecedented amounts of gold. The scale was so vast that it disrupted regional economies. Gold flooded markets, prices rose, inflation followed for years. This was recorded by historians of the time. This was not rumor, this was economic consequence. The significance cannot be understated. It proves Africa was not poor. It proves Africa was not peripheral. It proves Africa shaped global systems. One brother chased the horizon, the other reshaped economies. Together, they represent an African reality that later narratives worked to erase. When American Negro elders spoke of a time before slavery, this was the power they remembered, even if names changed and details softened over generations. Memory does not always preserve facts perfectly. It preserves meaning. When did our history become oral? When writing is denied, memory becomes sacred. For American Negroes, history survived through voice because voice could not be confiscated as easily as paper. Literacy was restricted, records were destroyed, education was criminalized. You were reclassified over and over, then from slaves to natives to Negroes to American Africans, and now so-called blacks. So memory became the archive. Grandparents became libraries. Families became institutions, stories became shields. Oral tradition exists because silence was enforced. It exists because truth needed somewhere to live. These stories survived across families that never met each other, across regions separated by distance and time. That consistency matters. When multiple communities preserve similar memories independently, it is not coincidence, it is continuity. Oral history does not compete with written history, it completes it. The Negroes are the sons and daughters of Abu Bakr. To say we are the sons and daughters of Abu Bakr is not a claim of royal paperwork, it is a declaration of inheritance. It means our identity did not all begin in captivity. It means we descend from people who navigated, governed, and planned. It means slavery was an interruption, not an origin. Yes, Lord. This phrase survived because it answered a question textbooks refused to address. Why did a people stripped of everything still carry dignity? Why did they still recognize themselves as more than property? Because memory survived. If this generation does not record these stories, they will be dismissed as if they never existed. Silence will be mistaken for absence. We remember on purpose, because those who know seem to forget on purpose. But privately, do you see what they worship? And for those who don't know and was not taught your history, you now have no excuse. Black Jesus, Black James, Black Christ is the black with the knowledge. The color doesn't matter, or does it? To us, whoever has the knowledge is what matters, and heavy is the head that wears the crown. Africa, it's time. You should bow to your king, Master Abu Bakr, and the kingship of the American Negro. This project exists to preserve memory, not to debate it. We can't be debated. We only choose to debate our equals, spirit, knowledge, and understanding. Yes, Lord. History forgot us on purpose, but we teach to our kids like the elders taught to us. We remember on purpose. We are legend. Happy New Year's 2026.
Which he argued that Africans had contact with the Americas long before Christopher Columbus. He presented evidence such as linguistic similarities, African-style art in pre-Columbian cultures, and the presence of African genetic traits in some indigenous American populations. Fact 2. Van Sertima was not just a historian, he was also a linguist who studied the connections between African and indigenous American languages. His research explored how African civilizations influenced cultures worldwide, challenging Eurocentric historical narratives. Fact 3. In 1987, Van Sertima was invited to testify before the U.S. Congress during hearings on the contributions of Africans to world history. He used this platform to emphasize Africa's role in early civilizations, particularly its influence on science, engineering, and navigation. Fact 4. Van Sertima was a professor of African studies at Rutgers University for over 3 decades. His lectures and writings inspired countless students and scholars to re-examine African history from a more Afrocentric perspective. Fact 5. To further his mission of highlighting African achievements, Van Sertima founded the Journal of African Civilizations, which published scholarly research on the contributions of African cultures in fields such as astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. His work continues to challenge mainstream historical narratives and inspire new generations of researchers.
The Mali Empire, one of the wealthiest and most powerful empires of its time, flourished in West Africa during the 13th and 14th centuries. Known for its incredible wealth, thriving trade, and rich culture, the empire was ruled by a series of visionary leaders. Among these leaders was Mansa Abu Bakr II, a ruler with grand ambitions and an insatiable curiosity. In the early 14th century, Abu Bakr II made a bold decision that would forever etch his name in the annals of history. And set sail across the Atlantic Ocean. His goal? To discover what lay beyond the horizon and expand the empire's knowledge and influence.
Didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us. That dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I've gone through a lot of soul-searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go I think the biggest problem now is that we got our gains over the last 12 years at bargain rate, so to speak. Didn't cost the nation anything. In fact, it helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations.
Told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. There's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time.
America. Yeah. I'm worried about our nation because it's sick with racism still. Just think about the fact that we live in a nation which was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. And yet men are still arguing over whether the color of a man's skin determines the content of his character. And I believe that the Lord told me to say to the United States of America that is sick with militarism and is sick with excessive materialism. Have you ever thought about it? There are between 38 and 50 million people in the United States of America who are poverty-stricken, making income less than the poverty level. And yet, this is the richest nation in the history of the world. Our national gross product this year will go beyond $800 billion. And yet, there are between 38 and 50 million people who are poverty-stricken. Now, something wrong. A lot of people are afraid to say it. But I don't mind saying it. You see, somebody said to me the other night, don't you think, Dr. King, you are going to have to start speaking more in terms of the administration's policy? Because since you started talking against the war in Vietnam, it's hurt the budget of your organization, and people who once respected you don't respect you anymore. And I had to look over and say, sir, I'm sorry, but you don't know me. I'm not a consensus leader. I don't determine what is right and wrong by looking at the budget of my organization, and I don't determine what is right and wrong by taking a Gallup poll of the majority opinion. And so, because there's something wrong, our struggle must continue. And what we must see is that our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. I'm going to be honest enough to tell you that I'm worried about
people wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, as other humans are intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, then the black man will think like a black man, and he will feel for other black people. And this new thinking and feeling will cause black people to stick together. And then at that point, you'll have a situation where when you attack one black man, you are attacking all black men. And this type of black thinking will cause all black people to stick together. And this type of thinking also will bring an end to the brutality inflicted upon black people by white people. And it is the only thing that will bring an end to it. No federal court, state court, or city court will bring an end to it. It's something that the black man has to bring an end to himself.
Ascended his throne aboard the grandest of ships, his presence commanding the endless horizon. With the vast ocean before him, he laughed in the face of fear. Sea monsters whispered myths of the abyss, and the terrifying edge of the world could not shake his resolve. The fate of Mansa Abu Bakr II and his mighty fleet remains cloaked in shadow. They never returned to the shores of West Africa, deliberately erased, a legacy stolen from the pages of history. The legend of Abu Bakr II's daring voyage endures, igniting the imaginations of historians and adventurers alike.